ask you as far as like, if, being smart in the military, how that plays out. Because I did one in prison, a video about that. And in prison, bro, Jews will try to, they'll try to, split your wig, bro, if you're too smart and they think like, you think you're better than them. And I know, like, one of the benefits is, people will, to some degree, some dudes respect you, but dudes who are jealous of you, most likely who look like you, will try to take you down because they don't want you to be any smarter than them, or, people to like you because of your intelligence. And I've seen guys actually dumb themselves down around certain people to fit in, which is disgusting too. Yeah. So I know in the military, I know like when I would see officers, which, generally these guys went to college, they got an officer position, they were highly respected. The officers club, they had enlisted club, officers club. Those guys were G's. The officer come through and, he's supposed to be somebody of conduct becoming. So he's supposed to be able to not mess with enlisted guys' wives because he can potentially get this guy killed, sending him somewhere. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy shit people don't realize in the military. Like, dude, there's power, Yeah. And so how did you see that when you seen smart guys and guys who kind of like walked through there and had all the little stuff on their shirt, man? What did you notice from that?
So intelligence is good if it's along a certain, if it's within the construct of the military. Like if you're highly intelligent on military acumen, on planning, these type of things are looked at. However, where it stops is asking questions. So maybe they like intelligence, but they don't like wisdom, because I mean, they can't like wisdom. They haven't won a fucking war since World War II. So, because basically I was what was considered a smart ass the entire time. Right. And typically when you're calling somebody a smart ass, it's because they're accurately and comically pointing out something that actually is a flaw. I mean, that's typically what smart asses do, is they found some like break in the armor of whatever the argument is, and are just clearly pointing out something very simple. And you're like, oh, well, you're just being a smart ass type thing. The military is very obviously it's very structured and very regimented, and it's like a self-licking ice cream cone, and they are their own biggest fan, right? So, they'll teach you this doctrine, and you'll be like, well, hey, that hasn't got us a win in 15 years. Are we still going to try this? And they're like, that's the type of intelligence they don't like. They like if you are smart enough to navigate within their construct to the answers they're looking for. Like, well, yes, sir, of course we need to do the exact same operation you did last time. Like, that person's smart enough to know that the old man wants to see something done in a certain way, but he's not wise enough to know that in the long term it's going to fail because it hasn't worked yet. It's kind of a difficult way to say it, or a difficult thing to explain. They don't like out of the box thinking unless you're in a very certain amount of units. And even if you're in those units, I'm talking like the high special guys, like your Delta and your SEAL Team 6, you're supposed to be out of the box thinking commando. I don't know how many of those dudes know what's up with the Federal Reserve, that they're slaves. I don't know how many of those dudes can tell you about the beast from Jekyll Island. I don't know how many of those dudes would agree with the supposition that this world is controlled by elite banking families.
So they don't know about like the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, or
right. I mean, they're highly intelligent problem solvers. I mean, those guys are problem solvers bar none. But it's like, okay, you're smart on that. You can pick the lock, sneak up through here, use all this high tech shit, shoot this guy, do all this crazy math to pull off a sniper shot. But you can't figure out why we're still fighting the Afghans 20 years later. Like that level. I've worked with some of the most brilliant people I've ever met, like in the Marines, but then towards the end, when I was a malfunctioning cog, and I would start to ask them, it's like, well, hey, how, simple questions like how exactly does this protect the Constitution? Like, just spell it out for me and I'll go along with it. Right. But tell me how. And they're like, they basically just regurgitate the web of lies as if it's the actual reality, when every single one of them are very easily debunkable. but they're, you know, a cyber officer. This guy is like a computer whiz, but just not. So I think it's intelligence and not wisdom. And they don't like wisdom, and they don't like actual intelligence.
Now, are those guys like, have you seen where, when, like you said, you do have this intelligence and maybe you can think out the box, and like somebody recognizes, and maybe you get tapped to go, hey man, when you retire, I got a buddy over at Vanguard, I got a buddy at BlackRock, I got a buddy over here at street, state street, what is it?
Yeah,
I forgot.
Front Street or whatever the fuck it's
Yeah,
called.
that might have a position over there, paid very likely. Do those people, have you seen like where are they looking for guys who are, kind of like in the machine, but they could like pull in because they know in the corporate world these guys know how to follow orders, but they're smart, but they'll do things and not really question these things. Do they get a lot of those guys get picked from the military?
Yeah, I think they do, and I think the military is set up to select for people who like to abuse other people and people who like to be abused. That's like, so that's the two personality types that the military is mostly made up of. People who are just capable of taking abuse. Like, hey, I'm going to give you some order, and there's no real reason behind it, and you're just going to do it because you like being a part of this thing where you get told what to do. And there's people who like that power, that, like you were talking about, like, hey, I'm the officer, I'm over. Talk about some class separation shit. There's an enlisted club and an O club, and you can get in trouble for talking. In fact, I got in trouble for dating a female Marine major, right? And I was an officer, so it's like, but I wasn't the right kind of officer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, she was like she was clean and from inside the house, and I was fucking like one of the workers outside that are like, so I got in trouble for fucking an officer. It's shit. What was your question again?
Well, just how the recruiting process and being tapped, but like, even what you said though about, like you said, the officer and this and that. I mean, it's no different. Like, even if you're a dude from like the street and you're wealthy, but there's even within the Black society a class that's fraternity. Oh, I'm a Kappa something, I'm a Beta whatever, right. And they're like, we're better than you. It's a different, rankings. So these guys, they're from the hood, and we're part of this boule, this black, almost like that. Their own
boule.
Yeah, I'm talking about, like that circle who kind of protects the other Mason, but the black version, and they're like kind of like
Prince Hall.
Yeah.
So within the military, you are rewarded for that corporate style think, right? And to become a general, it's a congressional like selection process. You're no longer being promoted by your peers in the military. You actually have to go up and like kiss the ring, and it's like, but that's how you get selected to be a general. So these guys that are getting selected by congressmen who have donors, senators, whoever does the selection, I forgot exactly how it works. They're picking guys that are going to give the right answers, and those guys got to where they are by giving the right answers. I mean, these are the generals who were okay with being in Afghanistan 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, and constantly coming up with some kind of a story as to why that's even happening. Always, every year, there was some general in Afghanistan saying like, all right, we're like 3 months away from wrapping this thing up. And like, that was one of the first things that cued me off into thinking that, holy shit, this entire thing's a lie, right? Because I saw this general up there talking about what was going on, and I'm like looking at what's going on out the window, and I'm like, this ain't the same thing, Jack.
Do you think though, behind closed doors, do they really believe that shit?
That's a good question. So you can use a true believer to a nefarious end. If you're a person that uses humans, and you probably saw this go down in prison, right? Like, you can, if somebody thinks a certain way, you can manufacture a reality around that person that will make them do what you want them to do. So I think I think there are a lot of true believers in the military, highly religious, true believers, American exceptionalism. It's just a misunderstanding that there weren't weapons of mass destruction. I'm sure those towers fell down from the airplanes, not like thermite or anything. I think there are guys like that, but then I also think you have like what you're talking about, like a fraternal sort of good old boy network, you know, and you can just kind of like pick it apart by what the person gets selected to do, and like who they like. You can look at like if they go do like congressional liaison time. A lot of our officers will go be like a attaché or some shit, like for this congressman or that congressman, and I think that's kind of like where you get like sniff tested. You know, it's kind of like exactly the same. I would assess it's the exact same thing that you talk about in like the Hollywood scene or like the porn scene. You know,
Well, we just seen this with the Olympics. I mean, and stop me if I'm wrong. You seen the Baphomet chain. You know what I'm talking about.
yes, sir.
And, this person's 50 something and still talking about cripping. Dude, I mean, I've seen guys like, and you're like, okay, this guy's talking about being a gang member, blood or crip. At 50 something years old, it's been basically a genocide of a whole culture. And yet they talk about racism, but these guys are still, but they are getting a platform that's very public. And it's like the whole character is reflecting in a part of culture that has killed multiple young people.
Yeah.
So it was, you know what I mean? It's almost similar, like I said, in Hollywood, where, hey, if you're playing the game and you can keep promoting this, we're going to pay you to do this. And we don't mind you, talking about that. We're not even going to correct you on it because we know that there's people that look up to you who will follow what you're saying. And then there's a bunch of other guys. And like I said, when if you were to sit there and say, man, why are you still talking about that? Why are you glamorizing that? I mean, what would their answer be?
Yeah, they would give you the lie. You know, they would tell you, whatever the lie was. Like I was singing about my life on the street or something like that. I think none of them are really going to be like, hey, look, I took a deal with the fucking devil. Just a second ago, a bunch of Navy officers got let off. There was a scandal where the guy's name was like Fat Albert or something. It was a Filipino dude who had bribed a ton of high-ranking Navy officers, like ship captains, admirals. He'd be like, "Hey, what? Let me know when your ship's going to pull into port, and I'll make sure everything's good." He was like a port contractor kind of guy. So these guys would give him, classified information, amongst other things, like, "Hey, yeah, we're coming into this port." Like all that shit's supposed to be relatively classified. And so he would lay on these dudes watches, expensive parties, hook them up with hookers and whatnot. And this was like a large portion of the Pacific Fleet was implicated by this guy. There's a lady, it might be hard to find her on YouTube right now, but it's an old interview by, I think her name is it's Kay Griggs, like Kaygrigs or something like that. Kay Griggs. And it's like, if you catch the full interview, it's like a 4-hour interview or something like that. And allegedly what it is, it's her spilling her guts about her Marine Corps husband to this person in the interview. And what she's basically saying is that a lot of these dudes, this is all alleged, make up. I think it's probably true nowadays, but it's alleged that, a lot of these dudes are gay behind closed doors. Higher ranking Marine officers are going here and lower ranking dudes are coming in. I heard them referred to as like Cherry Point Marines, these officers who were basically known to be like a homosexual clique within the thing, man. And
I don't mean to cut you off, but you don't remember that scandal they had down by Pendleton? Remember the guy was doing porn, gay porn? Remember those Marines down there, and they were going to that, there was that swinger spot, but these guys were like, he got busted, and there was a bunch of guys who were making like moonlighting as gay porn stars or something. I don't know if you remember that back in, was it the late 90s or early 2000s?
Yeah, I think my brother told me about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was something similar that was going around in North Carolina. Like, and then you get these guys who are, I guess, sleeper cells for lack of a better term. I mean, like Rhodes Scholars, anybody that's doing anything involved with the Cecil Rhodes Foundation, Rhodes Scholars, I'd be highly questionable of those dudes in the military. I would be highly suspect of anybody that came from any Ivy League school, any Yale dudes fucking floating around, man. towards the end of my career with the DoD, when I was really hip to a lot of this stuff, it shocked me that I'm like, hey, you look around the parking lot and there's Masonic stickers on everybody's, not everybody, but there's a ton of Masonic things on cars in like the parking lot. And I'm like, this is like a top secret facility. These dudes have an oath they swear to each other where their little brotherhood of the lodge trumps whatever's going on inside this building, so like at what point is that a conflict of interest, so I think that's probably how you get the revolving door, or at least partially how you get the revolving door of, the brass of the military into the military industrial cycle. But once again, so another thing to consider is generals are treated like rock stars in the military. I mean, this guy's never won a war. Most of them have never fought in a war. Like, they're literally studio gangsters, man. Most generals are studio gangsters, pure and simple, man. Like,
that sound like a lot of hip hop artists.
Yeah, like most generals have no respect coming from like any sort of like mid-level service member with any like actual combat under their belt. They look at a general like a waste of time. It's like, what's this guy doing here again? I got shit to do, right? But in your role as a general, dude, you get a driver, you get flown around all over the place on the taxpayer's dime. Dude, you get as part of your compensation package, you get a dishes and a linen allowance. Like, so that you can buy new dishes and new linen. Cause like as a general, you're supposed to, have other generals over and shit. Like, so you basically get paid to stock up on nice plates and fucking, and dinnerware, right?
And so how those guys, the general, how they selected them? So you saying these guys come from maybe a certain Ivy League school, or they're kind of tapped, and then they're able to kind of avoid any of the like real conflict and kind of work their way into a position where they avoided a lot of the bullshit.
That would be one of my assessments. Yeah, I think if we stared at enough people's careers, you would see, and I've seen officers get moved through a very specific career field because they've been earmarked basically for battalion command, for regimental command, for command is a big deal in the military, right? So if you've been picked for command, it's because it's almost like the mafia. It's like the rest of everybody's been like, okay, we've given this guy the sniff test. He's not going to stand in front of his guys and tell them a bunch of crazy shit that, he's not going to go off record. He's not going to go off script. He's going to run the Marine Corps rah thing. He's not going to say a bunch of controversial shit. And then the guys who are controversial guys, they get slid off into other offices. Like, hey, why don't you go over there into the planning office? You're not going to be able to command anything. And most of these guys get out at like lieutenant colonel. It's like a filtering process. Like, I can think of a real good dude that I used to know.
Sounds like Hollywood, man.
Yeah, he was a lieutenant colonel, and he, didn't fit the mold of the other lieutenant colonels. In fact, like when I got in trouble, he was one of the dudes that stood up for me, which is like a no-no. Like if you're one of the shiny brass, you're not supposed to like stand up for anybody that gets in trouble, right? For like banging that major. Yeah, he was like, what the fuck's the problem? Like, he's like, I thought that's what Marines are supposed to do. Like, drink heavy, fight hard, and buck chicks. That's not what's happening here. Like, good dude though, but so he got stuck down in some office where he was just supposed to like look at technology occasionally, and so he retired. It's to answer your question.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the same vetting process from what I heard, depending on how famous you want to be. How bad do you want to go to the next level? I mean, if you're behind the camera, then you're not really known. So, you can kind of avoid having to maybe compromise your soul to a degree. But if you're somebody who's like seeking fame and your whole career is based on exposure, then there's levels, and depending on what you're willing to do, because at that point, if you fall off script, they have something that will expose you, and that right there, it'll probably it'll get you to either go into a drug-induced stupor or suicide yourself, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think people chase that demon. It's like in the military, it's like your suck-ups, I guess. It's the dudes that are going to go to the boss's party. They look for that next venue to get up in there, right? And so those are the guys that are probably sniffed out. It's like, okay, well, after I literally think it happens probably the same way, you know, like at a certain point, you're a high ranking officer, like maybe with some congressional people, and it's like, well, hey, we're all going to go to this party afterwards. Like you coming, Steve, or whatever. And then you show up, and remember that like Republican staffer or whatever. I think he was like even in a wheelchair or something. He was like, hey, I've been invited to like 15 orgies recently. You know, I think maybe you just show up at one of those, man. And
Well,
then,
it's interesting you say that, because in Hollywood, it's like, hey, Cody, you want to go to the party? And then you're in the party, and you're thinking it's just, man, maybe I'm having a great night. Two chicks come on you. Hey, Cody, let's go in this room right here. You go there. They got blow. Maybe they give you, hey, let's drink. They got some drinks. Dude, you're partying, whatever. Next thing you know, you're like, damn, you wake up, you're butt naked. You don't know what happened.
yeah.
Dude, you wake up, the party, you're like, chicks is gone, your watch is gone, you can't looking for your phone, your shit, you leave, bro, you don't know. And then, like you said, later on, you get a call or whatever. But like, dude, it's like, it's always a test. I remember I had a friend, and he's like, oh, Big Herc, you don't smoke no weed? I'm like, nah, man. He's like, I know, man, you're a health freak, bro. You don't smoke no weed? Oh, man, blah, 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 blah. Let's have a protein drink. All right, Big Herc, I'll holler at you tomorrow. And then I knew this girl who was a stripper, and she's like, I know you were kicking it with so-and-so earlier, but shit, after you left, like later on that night, we brought in the blow, we brought over the girls, we were doing this, doing that. So they know if you're not really with that life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They kind of feel you out. And so, like you said, if you're going to the parties and every time they see you, you're like standing by the door, like, look, don't invite Cody no more. He's not with the program. They're trying to see if they can get you to cheat, do anything they can get you to compromise your morals or your values, because that will give them something over you. And it's crazy, because it sounds like in the military, it's the same thing. Whether in going through politics, it's the same thing in Hollywood.
I mean, it's probably a cookie cutter mold that the powers that be that control this place have figured out worked, and they just replicate it again and again and again.
Yeah,
man.
A lot of similarities there, man. A lot of similarities, and like you said, it's definitely parallels both cultures, even though one seems to be so far from the other. But I think a lot of people don't really just step back and look at it like that. That's what's so cool talking with you, and how we connected, and then just looking at this big picture, and just all the similarities, man. And I'm always looking like trying to figure out stuff, and then trying to see, well, man, I get, don't get emotional over this and get caught up in this. And I told somebody today, I'm like, to be honest with you, they said, what, Friday, the stock market lost, 2.3 trillion, right?
Yeah.
And then the NASDAQ was down 1,000 points on Monday, right? So, oh my God, we're in a recession, blah, blah, blah. Warren Buffett sold off a bunch of his stock.
Right.
Just in time, but I look at it as though, like, you ever seen that ladder, like when the Vikings are trying to climb up and invade, and they get to the top and they push the ladder, they fall back. And that's what they do with society every so often. And then they buy it all again and they build it up again. But I tell people, don't get caught up in that, because there's always money being made. Just like you said, dude, you getting angry, the government. Look, just go buy some Lockheed. Go buy some Boeing. Don't get out your feelings. Figure it out. We got to not let them fearmonger us or paralyze us, but think, let's see how we can build. And dude, we can take this, me, you, Aaron, and whoever. Man, we can make us a good 7 and be cool and be like, we're ahead of the curve. Use the stuff that you were taught, use what I was taught, and just use it to enhance our life, rather than being caught up and angry and emotional off all this shit we have no control over. We can't do nothing about what's going on with J.D. Vance and Kamala, all these people, man, Kamala and whoever, man. All we can do is sit and be, observers, have great conversation. But at the end of the day, this shit is laid out. We don't know what the fuck they've laid out in all actuality.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, solid advice, man.
But yeah, man, shit, we've been on almost 2 hours.
I love talking to you, man. I'll hang around.
Oh, shit. I always appreciate you coming on, man. And, dude, we got, like I said, once a month, between here and Fresh Out, we're going to be getting down. But I appreciate you sharing, getting insight. My viewers are gonna love this. I'm gonna chop this up, and we're gonna have a bunch of episodes. But dude, it's a pleasure, Cody. Every time we get a chance to talk, bro.
Dude, thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. Love everything you're doing.
Thank you, man. And I know it's late out there, so enjoy the rest of your night, man. I'll do the same. To pick up a limited edition GTA poster signed by me for $10, or with your purchase of a Wig Splitter Porsche t-shirt, I'll throw in a free poster signed. And pick you up a sticker for your car, or a patch, or a sticker for your laptop, or maybe a beanie, or read one of the many books that BigHerc916 has authored. I gotta hurry up and wash my ass. Go to BigHerc916.com, pick you up a bar of soap, and wash your ass, or else you're gonna be under arrest too. Oh shit.